I think young people in care sometimes find it difficult to express themselves. They find it difficult to negotiate for what they want or what they need. Sometimes they don't feel like they're being heard, so they might actually tell the adults in their world or the people that make decisions that they're unhappy with a set of circumstances or a decision that's been made, but don't necessarily how to take it to that next place.
Anyone can advocate for a young person, from their friend to their teacher to a relative, anyone at all who's in that person's life.
Advocacy is about representing the voice of children, and so we want to hear from them in their words, their message.
When a young person first makes contact and requests advocacy, the first thing I'll do is try and make sure that I'm very clear about what it is they're asking from me. Not just from what they want, but what they expect. What it is that they think I can achieve, and then obviously work through that conversation in more detail. From that point, I'd be clear with them that I need to make some further inquiries. I need to actually ask some questions. So I'll talk to them about, who I might be asking those questions of, who I will be making contact with, and I'll check in with them that that's okay.
Whilst the job of an advocate is to represent the views of the child, talking to others gives us a perspective and a context to the issue. It also gives us the opportunity to assess what are the impacts of the advocacy. If we are advocating for a child on a particular issue, we can assess how that might impact on other areas of the child's life by gaining information from others who are part of their lives.
In the training centres, I have had young people ask me to advocate for them on certain issues, and for whatever reason I've said I don't think that's a position of advocacy for me. But what I do is I try to get them to understand why advocacy isn't appropriate, why a decision that's been made can't be overturned.
Just by having a conversation about how they might negotiate their way through the issue or a decision that's been made, or how they can raise a complaint, or perhaps talk to the adults that have made decisions differently. Sometimes at the end of that conversation they don't feel the need to actually have us get involved, so they might have resolved it themselves, and then we'll ask them to check in with us or offer an opportunity for us to have a follow-up conversation, and at times it can be left at that.
I listen to that person and I'm satisfied that their voice has been heard in whatever the decision-making process has been, that they feel that they've been able to talk it through, they've been able to understand why that decision was made, and they're also able to understand why there is no place for me to have a role in advocacy.
We need to assess the safety and the well-being of the child, and there may be at times when a child is wanting you to advocate for a circumstance or a situation that may put them at risk or that is already unsafe for them. And so an advocate needs to have a conversation with a child around the limitations of advocacy. An advocate could not seek an outcome for a child where it will put them at risk.
I tell all the young people that I advocate for that I'm not the person who makes the decision. I can't change the decision. I can present their views, I can present their voice, and I can advocate really hard that their voice and their views are heard throughout the processes, throughout the decisions that are being made. But I'm not in a position to change the decisions. Hopefully just the process of having their voice heard may sometimes influence the outcome of certain decisions.
I think one of the really important things when you're going to enter into an agreement with a young person as to, if, when and how you're going to advocate for them is that you don't make any promises. It's important that from the outset a young person is aware of your limitations, has a clear understanding of what your role is as an advocate, but also has some sort of realistic expectation around what you can and cannot achieve. It's important that you're honest with the young person about that.
If a child wants something that can't be achieved or might be bad for them, we need to be honest with the children around the limitations for advocacy. We would need to be honest with them about what risk there may be. In that, there would probably be some common ground. There's like a root cause to an issue that we may be able to find common ground and talk with the young people about the opportunities, where there are opportunities for advocacy rather than a particular outcome. Ideally, advocacy is something that happens in a timely fashion because children and young people's importance and concept of time, it's not something that they want dragged out, but not all resolutions come quickly either.
The one thing that I will always tell a child or a young person is that I'll keep them informed and I'll keep contact with them, even if that means I don't actually have any updates for you at the moment, but I am still working on this.
It's also important to promise a young person that you will keep them informed as to what's happening.
I will always tell a young person that I will call you back on this day or next week. I give them a time frame so they know they're not left wondering what's going on.
And I think it's important not to promise that they're going to get the outcome necessarily that they want. And it's also important not to make promises that can't be kept.
Often young people will approach us out of frustration because they feel that someone who is responsible for making decisions isn't hearing them, isn't listening to them, or doesn't care about what they've got to say. So one of the things that we need to remember is that, we're only involved in that young person's life for a short term. These other relationships are there for a long time.
If an advocate has not assessed the impact that advocacy may have on the child's life, the child's relationships with key people and other areas of their life, then there may be unintended consequences. Part of undertaking advocacy, talking with the child about their views and showing that you understand their views, is also talking with them about what else is happening in their lives and how the advocacy itself may impact on that and whether they feel there's any issues.
It can be, I think, dangerous if you were to advocate on that matter in isolation. It's important to get as much information as you can about the whole circumstances because everything in that person's life affects everything else.
Don't take sides. Don't let a young person feel as though you're completely on their side and all the adults are making wrong decisions or bad decisions, because again, you need to preserve those relationships and support them and having healthy and supportive relationships. And don't reflect any personal frustration. So if you're finding a certain situation difficult and if you're finding it hard to work your way through it, don't share that with the young person. They've already got their own frustrations.
Breaking the news to a child or a young person that advocacy has not been successful can be difficult because there are expectations about what can be achieved. Often, certainly, honesty about what the discussion involved and what outcomes could be negotiated. It's often that although an outcome may not be achieved in full, there is often room for negotiation, and so those negotiations can be discussed with a child or young person around the process of being involved, aside from just the outcome itself. It's often more important to a child to know that and have to feel confident that they've been involved in decision making and had their voice heard rather than the outcome itself.
The approach that I take is what learnings can we have gained from that? What have they achieved? So for example, what they have achieved, if they've achieved, they've successfully sought help. They have successfully been heard. They have been clear about what they want. They have sat down with, the people who make those decisions and actually explained to them why they want what they want. Sadly, for whatever reason, they may not have actually gotten what they wanted. But I guess you can encourage them to always use that as a way of, next time you want to advocate for something, you now know how to, who to get support from, how to go about it. And, under these circumstances at this time, this can't happen, but it doesn't mean it can't happen in the future and you shouldn't revisit it.
Ideally, advocacy is an opportunity to empower children and young people to believe that they have the right to be heard and that there are individuals who will support their voice to be heard, and where if they are lacking confidence to speak up themselves, that person will speak on their behalf. But hopefully through advocacy, they have developed confidence to speak out for themselves and have learned how to advocate for themselves.